Hello guys, this is Eli Esparza and I'm doing my student presentation on John Wesley. A little bit about John Wesley. He was born in Epworth, England in 1703. He was the son of prominent Anglican theologian Samuel and Susanna Wesley. Now, Susanna Wesley was the more prominent of the two, and she was very well known for her theology, her Anglican theology, and her sermons, as well as her biography on her life. So, John Wesley was very well educated throughout his whole life because of his parents, and eventually attended Oxford and lectured there, graduated from Oxford and also lectured there in Greek and New Testament studies. Now, John Wesley started the Methodist movement, and it had its roots in what is known as the Holy Club at Oxford. Now, the Holy Club was a group of John Wesley's peers who all got together and kind of lived a monastic lifestyle of fasting, prayer, and methodically helping those who were the least of these. So those who were in debt, those who just got out of prison, those who were poor, this one group would really go out into the city and go out into the roads and the towns and really help the people that were struggling. So it was a huge focus on the sanctification and the process of Christian living. And when the town started to notice this, they called them the Methodists because of their lifestyle. And at first, the Methodist was kind of a derogatory term to poke fun at these individuals. And however, John Wesley took it as a badge of honor. Now, John Wesley took this new form of Christian sanctification or Methodism, and he decided to take a mission trip to America. And John Wesley traveled to Savannah, Georgia, which was a colony at the time started by James Oglethorpe for people who were in debts and people who just got out of prison, as well as many Native Americans that were in the area. So John Wesley decides that this was a great opportunity to practice or to show his new methods in Christian sanctification. Now, during the trip to Savannah, Georgia, John Wesley travels with the Moravians on a ship, and during their travels, there was a huge storm, and John Wesley was really impressed by the Moravians' steadfastness and trust in God to deliver them from their troubles. Now, while John Wesley was very, very afraid at this time, thinking that he may drown and the ship will break apart, the Moravians, however, were extremely steadfast, and they just carried with them passion and faith in God to deliver them. Now, John Wesley was very influenced by this, and he knew that he had a lot to learn when it came to passion, faith, and trust in God. So while John Wesley arrives in Savannah, Georgia, he fails to become influential in America. And this was mostly due to the fact that he was not able to really convert people, or he was not able to really influence a lot of people through his theology alone, through his academic abilities, and just overall his immaturity. So he makes his way back to England, and he never forgets what he experienced with the Moravians during their time in troubling waters. Now, when John Wesley arrives in London, England, he is still very impressed by the Moravians' theology about sanctification and faith in God. So John Wesley decides that he must find out what it is. How did the Moravians have so much faith and passion in Christ? So while John Wesley meets up with the Moravians in London, he calls this newfound passion a new conversion. Now, this new conversion is not necessarily being saved at first. It's actually what you do after you are saved. It's a main focus on sanctification, and it mostly focuses on the eradication of sin and victory over sin within your life. And it focuses basically on a type of Christian perfection. Now, Christian perfection is not necessarily being completely perfect, but it's just your victory over habitual sin. So John Wesley, while he's learning from the Moravians in London, England, he takes this newfound victory over sin, and he calls it a new conversion, or Christian perfection. So he calls this Christian perfection. Now, Christian perfection, many people, they do not accurately define the term. They think it's an absolute perfection to become just like Christ, who is 100% perfect without any sin. And this is not really what John Wesley was preaching. In his sermon number 40, he shows how Christian perfection is just a play on words. It is not total perfection, but the process of being sanctified through conquering habitual sin. So in essence, it's not justification, but it's sanctification. And it's like a mix of Methodist and German Lutheran pietism. So in other words, if you must strive to after you are saved, you're striving and you're growing closer and closer to the fullness of Christ. So this was Christian perfection. It wasn't to try to be completely perfect without any sin, but it was a lifestyle of completely dedicating your life to Christ and showing how much the gospel has impacted your life. So Christian perfection continued. In Sermon 85, John Wesley describes salvation as instantaneous and also gradual. So of course you're justified not by works but of faith. But this faith is then like a mustard seed, which is tiny at first, but then grows into a great tree. So this is so our love for the gospel also grows through this. So as we are growing in Christ, we are actually perfecting ourselves in Christ until we reach a measure of stature in the fullness of Christ. And this is what John Wesley's main theology was. It was just after you are saved, you continue to grow and grow and grow until you reach an amazing measure of the fullness of Christ. So with this newfound theology that John Wesley learned from Lutheranism, and also his Anglican theology, which he learned in Oxford, and also from both his parents, as well as the Moravian theology, John Wesley then becomes the father of Methodism. And this is what we known today as the Methodists, with John Wesley being the father of Methodism. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and please answer or ask any questions that you have. Thank you.